And I would like to welcome Surbi Mahendru from Amazon Web Services, who's going to talk about better content through better listening. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's so nice to, I guess, virtually see everybody today. And here, I'm just going to adjust my camera so you guys can see me a little bit better. There you go. So thank you guys so much for coming. I'm really excited to be chatting with you all today. I see a comment, fellow Amazonian. Yes, nice to see you here today as well. Now, I hope you guys are having a great time. You know, we're in a time where we're all virtual, and I know we would all love to be in New Orleans on a parade. You know, I've got my beads here. Thank you, Jack. I've also got my drumsticks. I think next year we need to all ask Jack for a drum set so that we have something to jam these sticks on. Now with that, I am going to transition into just telling you guys a little bit about myself. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Jack, can you just confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, they look great.
Awesome, thank you. So jumping right in, just want to give you guys a little bit about, tell you guys a little bit about myself. Now, first and foremost, my name is Surbi, and to get this totally out of the way, my opinions are my own and do not represent the views of my employer. Now that said, let's get into the fun stuff. I love talking about customer experience, and even more so, I love building customer experiences. As a certified wellness nut, I also spend a lot of my time looking into personal development techniques that we can use to make ourselves better humans in the workplace. So when I think about that, I think about bringing kind of my whole self to work and thinking about how I can, of course, show up as a better person for myself as well as for my peers and for my team. Now, like many of you in the content space, I enjoy writing. But actually in my job, I don't do a lot of writing. In the world of digital content strategy, I've spent most of my career actually taking the content built by other people and determining how to make it stand out at the right time, at the right place, for the right audience. And this is usually done through various digital channels. And so as many of you guys may have experienced, it can be tricky to build a single unified content strategy or user experience when you have so many different elements to work with. You may have many different, let's say, web pages or digital properties that you have to work with. You're always going to have more than one persona that needs to be tailored to with the content. Now, if you're in a small, medium, or large size company, you probably still have multiple departments you're also serving, or clients if you're someone that's working with external companies as well. And then each of those departments represents, gosh, way too many stakeholders. And so it's not always as simple as, I'm going to give you a questionnaire, you're going to fill out all of your content requirements, and then I'm going to go ahead and just voila, give you a brief that you can work off of that essentially outlines your entire strategy and your wireframes, and you're good to go to build a customer experience. And so it's usually more of a constant back and forth and needing to build trust with the people that you're talking to in that room. And so now what we're facing is, in the irony of it all, I'm going to share with you today a screenshot of Zoom while I'm on Zoom with all of you to drive home a point of, well, human connection. As if content strategy wasn't already nuanced and a complex space, demand is exponentially increasing to build and showcase content digitally. 2020 has made it even tougher to co-create with our colleagues. And we need those colleagues to co-create with because they know that content better than any of us ever will. And so with a whole new sense of urgency this year to build and publish digital content, we have to work even harder at being mindful and thoughtful about connecting with those co-creators. How can we be more thoughtful of their intentions, their challenges, their needs when they're approaching us with their content problems? How can we connect with them, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well? Every day I find myself in first-time conversations, needing to convince stakeholders that I've met before to trust me with content. Like I mentioned, they probably know better than I ever will. And that content they've nurtured. They've spent time on that content, conceptualizing it, maybe working with an entire team that you've also never met to make that content come to life. And so I don't mean that I need them to trust me after I've pulled some data for them, after we've run some A/B tests, after we've done a URL inventory or had a chance to do some usability studies. I mean, I need them to trust me in those initial conversations right out the gate. And I need them to see me as a thought partner who's willing to co-create and allow me to take care and nourish and nurture that beloved content of theirs. And so right around the time we entered a global pandemic this year, I coincidentally was also reading a book called Time to Think. This book is authored by Nancy Klein, and it's a personal development and coaching book that really digs into making space for ourselves, but also making space for others to think and process through the information that we need to process in order to solve some of those challenging problems. And so as my frequent travel to Seattle headquarters started to lessen, and I started to find myself in back-to-back phone calls on remote meetings where I maybe, if I was lucky, had a minor bio break, a chance to take a minor bio break in between. I realized that I needed to maybe change how I was connecting with my own colleagues. And so I was wondering, could I maybe take the things I was learning from this book and actually start applying it to my conversations in the workplace and actually use it to fuel content strategy discussions? And so I want to share 3 important elements with you guys today that really can help improve the content listening, the listening framework that we can take forward in these future conversations. The first would be attention. The second would be ease. And the third, and most important that I feel today, is equality. When a new client or a stakeholder first approaches you with their content requirements, do you ever feel like you're talking 2 completely different languages? What about when you're in a room, or in this case, maybe a virtual room with multiple people, and everybody's program is the most important? Everyone's marketing plan is the top priority. Everyone's strategy or desire to build a strategy is something that needed to be done yesterday, and everybody feels that they need to be heard. Well, little old you, it's time to roll up your sleeves and start listening with your undivided attention. Put your phone down and get on FaceTime if you can. We can't always do it. And try to demonstrate curiosity, interest, and most of all, respect for the other people's ideas. The stakeholders talk about their programs with so much passion, it can be tricky to figure out the most pressing points. It's also important to let the other person speak in that case. So that way, when we give them a moment to pause and we ask clarifying questions, we may also be able to uncover some limiting assumptions. Limiting assumptions are that thing or those things that typically aren't said by a stakeholder, but are actually the thing that they're trying to get out in meeting with you and coming for your help in the first place. I once had a stakeholder team who wanted to redesign a web page. They hired a vendor to design it. They'd been putting months of work into figuring out what the new design would look like. And there was just one problem. Once they came to my team for help, I realized that none of their designs actually met the specs of our website guidelines. And so I wanted to tell them right off the bat, look, we can't do it. It's just not possible. This doesn't abide by our guidelines. And admittedly, I actually probably did do that the first time around. But of course, as good people do, they don't take no for an answer, and they want to make sure that they're feeling heard. And so we ended up jumping on a call, and I said, okay, if I'm going to jump on a call, I want to make sure it's productive. in thinking through, how I can be a better listener, I decided to change my dialogue to, we can't do this, and instead adjusted my mindset to, why do you want this? And so when we jumped on that call and we discussed that design, I realized what they were actually trying to do was relaunch a campaign that had once previously failed. And that campaign hadn't actually failed because of poor content, and it hadn't actually failed because of poor design. It had actually failed because the first time around, they applied the wrong audience segmentation. And so it was in that moment that I realized I needed to help them, not with redesigning a web page, but with rethinking their marketing segmentation plan. So, in these types of calls, what's really important is not just to give your undivided attention, but also we can't rush these conversations, right? And that brings me to ease. Ease is all about slowing things down. It's about offering freedom from rush or urgency. While it's counterintuitive to let the other individuals talk, and I swear sometimes even ramble for minutes on end, the time you invest in another person's thoughts up front can actually serve as time saved in the future. In passionate discussions about how to attract our prospect customers, I have found myself in some, I'd say maybe not so passionate, but very healthy debates with a stakeholder that I've gotten to know very well over the past few years. And when these passionate discussions turn into healthy debates, it can get really tricky to come and align on a decision. And so earlier this year, we hit a wall. We were simply not able to come to an agreement that could potentially impact some really big business decisions that we would need to essentially drive with for the remainder of the year. After a couple of meetings in March, I realized we're hitting a wall, we're not getting anywhere. And I decided maybe the next time around we chatted, I would try something different. So in this particular phone call, we jumped on and I let my stakeholder, let's call her Natalie, I let Natalie do all the talking. 5 minutes went by, 10 minutes went by. At the 20-minute mark, she paused and I said, Natalie, is there anything else you'd like to add? And actually there was. She had another 5 minutes of talking to do. And at the 25-minute mark, out of a 30-minute meeting, she finally said, that's it, I'm done. I'm not sure if I made sense, but I'm done. So I let Natalie talk and talk and talk until she got it all out on the table. What may have seemed like a ramble, in actuality, taught me a lot about Natalie. I learned that this had nothing to do with what I thought it had to do with, which was, I thought Natalie didn't trust me. I thought she didn't feel like she could trust my team and what we were trying to deliver. It actually had nothing to do with that. Her frustration wasn't with me or my team at all. In fact, she said, I love the work that your team is doing, and I love what you guys are driving forward. Her frustrations were actually, as many of you can probably relate today, with COVID-19. Her frustrations were with having 2 young kids at home and not knowing how to juggle having those kids at home without having the help of a nanny and being in the same remote back-to-back calls that I was in. And so while I didn't have much of a chance to talk on this particular phone call, we jumped on the phone the next morning and we ended up actually driving home the decisions that we needed to make for the remainder of the year. And we even had a little bit of extra time to talk about Brene Brown, which I thought was pretty special. Not a lot of work conversations sometimes where you get to talk about Brene Brown and coaching and all the woo-woo fun stuff. And so I had a chance to see in this particular example a vulnerable side of Natalie. And I also had a chance to make a friend out of Natalie. And I thought that was really special. And now I've found in the last 2 quarters, we have spent all of our phone calls. Well, we've actually been able to solve all of our content strategy and customer experience decisions via email, while using phone calls to catch up on COVID-19 and protests happening nearby, how we can show up as better leaders for our employees during a time of unrest. And that was something that really, really made me feel like we were actually making progress in more than one important space. And of course, these phone calls were probably what we needed the most when human interaction has been something that we've all been lacking this year. Now, look, I know we can't all become BFFs with our stakeholders. And Natalie and I'm so grateful for our relationship. But for those of us that can't always become BFFs, or for those people that we don't always feel like we can become BFFs with, it's not realistic, right? There's just so many different stakeholders, so many different conversations. But there's one thing I ask of you guys today to take away from this discussion. It's this: we must recognize that regardless, everyone has an opinion worth listening to. No matter what one's position is in a company, no matter how many years of experience they have, what gender pronoun they choose, or the color of their skin, everybody has an opinion that is worth being heard. I've been in way too many conversations in my career where someone's idea or opinion was dismissed because of their stature in the company or because of their unconscious biases. And I'll admit, I've probably been there too, and I would think that most of us have been there. And so while we can't necessarily become BFFs, what we can do is recognize that everyone's opinion deserves a chance to be heard. And the customer experiences we aim to perfect, however, they cannot be perfected without improving the conversations and connections that we drive in the workplace. So sometimes the other person is setting up time to speak with you as just a way to get it out on the table and to think through those problems themselves. Giving them the space to think can often lead to someone coming up with a more accurate content plan. And so I encourage all of you today listening in to try and set up a listening framework in your next conversation. Start by 1, giving them your undivided attention. Recognize that the topic they're coming to you with is their topic, potentially not your topic, and it needs to be treated as such and with the utmost respect. Show that respect, that interest and curiosity in what they're coming to talk to you about. Ask those preliminary questions and try to uncover the thing that they're not talking about to try and remove those limiting assumptions. Then, when they're on a roll and you've had a chance to hear them out a little bit, I'd actually say to sit back a little bit longer and don't rush the process. The time that you are going to spend now in hearing them out is going to enable you to build faster in the future. And last but not least, and most importantly, is remember that everyone's opinion matters, especially during this time. The relationships you build with your co-creators will reflect the experiences you build for your customers. And investing in those relationships in the workplace will, of course, then reflect in how we're delivering our customer experiences. During a time we feel isolated and unheard, better listening may just help us find our tribe. It may help us make a difference through better content. And our opportunities are endless when we feel connected with ourselves, with each other, and with our communities. With that, I want to thank all of you for listening today.
Okay, thank you very much.